Okay, so we are doing 3.8, graphing the line using the x and y intercept. So we're just going to slightly change what we've done before. You guys should know by now that we've graphed using y equals mx plus b, where m is our slope and b is our y-intercept. And today we're going to graph differently. We're going to graph a little bit differently, and it's using the x-intercept and the y-intercept. So we already know what the y-intercept is. It's the value of y where it crosses the x-axis, or sorry, the y-axis. And we know that now the x-intercept, just like it sounds by its name, is the value of x where it crosses the x-axis. So to graph this type, we're going to graph the line using the x and y-intercept method. So our job is going to be setting x to 0 and determine the y-intercept from that. Okay, so we're going to set x to 0 and we're going to determine the y-intercept from that. All right. So when we go through that, we're going to then graph the y-intercept, and then we're going to set the y-intercept or y to 0 and determine the x-intercept and graph through that. And then we'll just simply draw a line through both of them and extend with arrowheads and label the equation. Now, you've probably not seen this before, but this is what we call the standard form equation of a line, okay? So standard form, and this is really what you're going to see when you have to do this on a quiz or a test. If you see it in this format or form, you're probably going to have to graph it based on your x and y intercept method. So it says set x to 0 to determine the y-intercept. So simply, I'm going to make x equal to 0. So when I write out our equation 4x plus 3y equals 12, I'm going to sub in 0 into the x spot. So that will look like 4 times 0 plus 3y is equal to 12. And from there, 4 times 0, anything times 0 is 0. We'd get 3y is equal to 12. And then we know that if we want to get y by itself, we have to divide both sides by 3, which would give us the answer of y is equal to 4. And since we found the y-intercept, because we know that the coordinates of a y-intercept has x as 0, we're going to put our dot right at 4. Okay? Just like it said up top, it says find the x-intercept. So in this case, we're going to set y to 0, because if any line or any dot falls on the x-axis, it doesn't go up or down at all. Therefore, the coordinates of it would have 0 in the y spot. So in this case, once again, we'd write out our equation and we sub in 0 for the y. And in this case, it would go there, making it 4x plus 3 times 0 is equal to 12. Now, if we multiply 3 by 0, we know that it would just cancel out and be 0. So it'd be 4x is equal to 12. To get x, it would be 12 divided by 4, giving us the answer of 3. Therefore, our x-intercept would be at 3. So from there, the last thing we need to do is graph the equation. So we would connect both of those lines, add the arrowheads, and last but not least, what we do with every single equation is graph it. Label it 4x plus 3y equals 12. Okay. Thumbs up if everyone has that down. Just waiting for a few more thumbs. Cool. Okay, so moving on, we have another equation here, and it's graph the equation 5x minus 6y equals 30. So once again, we know whenever we're finding the y-intercept, we set x to 0, and whenever we're finding the x-intercept, we set y to 0. So it's just the opposites, and we should know that if something's on the y-axis, then the x part of the coordinate is 0, and we know that if something's on the x-intercept, the y part of the coordinate is 0. So in this case, we would write out our equation 5x minus 6y equals 30. We would sub in that 0 into the x spot. And 5 times 0 being 0, so we'd be left with negative 6y equals 30. And in this case, to get y by itself, we divide both sides by negative 6, giving us negative 5 as our answer. So y would be equal to negative 5. And we place that point on our Cartesian plane. For our next part of solving or graphing this line, we're going to set y to 0. So we would sub in 0 into the y position. And that would cancel itself out. So it'd be 5x is equal to 30. And we know that if we want to get x by itself, we divide both sides by 5, giving us the answer of x equals 6. Simply, we put our point at 6. Finally, we're going to graph the equation, and we do that, we know, by taking our ruler and making that point, adding the arrowheads, and writing the equation 5x minus 6y equals 30. So in lesson 3.8, guys, we just learned that we need to take the standard form, find our y and x intercept. When we find our y intercept, we sub in 0 for the x portion. And when we find our x intercept, we sub in 0 for y. That will give us our x and y intercepts. From there, we just connect the lines, add our arrowheads, and of course, have our label at the top of the equation each time.